Welcome everyone. My name is Candace, and I'm very happy to welcome everyone to the Caregivers Connections webinar today. I'd like to go over a couple housekeeping items today. So as you enter the webinar and as you participate, if you could please stay on mute for the entirety of this portion. Once we get to the Q&A, I will ask everyone to unmute themselves or raise a hand or type in the chat if you have questions, and we can address those questions in the Q&A portion. If you could also leave your video off, that would be great. And we'll get going. Again, my name is Candace, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Center for Living Organ Donation. It was created in 2018 by the Ashmere Transplant Center to improve access to living organ donation for people who need life-saving kidney or liver transplants and those who want to give the transformative gift of life. We raise awareness, provide support, promote research, and also offer hope to thousands of people across Canada who are waiting for kidneys and livers, and everyone who wants to be part of their future. I am very grateful to be collaborating today with the Kidney Foundation, and I'm going to hand it over to Sadia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sadia Beg, and I am one of the program coordinators at the Kidney Foundation within the Ontario branch. And I first like to say thank you to the Center and Candace for allowing us to have this collaboration with our amazing facilitators and sharing their amazing knowledge and experience. So over nearly 6 decades, the Kidney Foundation has been guided by fundamental principles in terms of innovation, leadership, collaboration. Our vision is to provide excellent healthcare and optimal quality of life for those affected by kidney disease, and of course, a cure at the end of the day. The Kidney Foundation is a national volunteer organization committed to eliminating the burden of kidney disease, and with our mission in terms of striving and strengthening research and providing education, as well as peer support to all of our patients and families and our wonderful caregivers that go through the ebbs and flows of this kidney journey. We, of course, are one of the leads in providing one-to-one peer support and group supports for all those individuals affected by kidney disease across the province with, again, and I stress this a lot, with our amazing, dedicated, who truly are the heart and soul of this program. We could not do anything without them. So with that, I am going to introduce our amazing volunteers very, very briefly, so you guys kind of know who they are and what they bring to the table when it comes to their experience as unique and individual caregivers. First we have is Francine Gerard. Francine is a caregiver to her husband who was diagnosed quite unexpectedly with kidney failure in June of 2015. She also donated one of her kidneys to him in April of 2018. And through their kidney journey, Francine has been by her husband's side while he underwent hemodialysis in center 3 times a week. And then he ended up switching to peritoneal dialysis at home. So he is currently transplanted and doing very well. And Francine is doing very well as a living donor. So thank you, Francine, for being here. Next, we have Andrew Van Wyck. Andrew is a caregiver to his wife, Lori, and is also a living donor. His wife was diagnosed with membrane proliferative glomerulonephritis in 1983 and started home peritoneal dialysis in 2013. In 2015, via the Parent Exchange program, she received a kidney and Andrew donated anonymously. Andrew has been volunteering with the Kidney Foundation since 2017. He also co-facilitates the patient peer support meetings and the caregiver peer support meetings. And he also moderates the kidneyconnect.ca blog that we have as well. So he wears a lot of hats in our department, and he's also retired and has lots of time to give back and assist others through the peer support program. So thank you, Andrew, for being here today. Next we have is David Lillian. David has been a caregiver to his wonderful wife, Bonnie, for almost 3 years, has been a caregiver, not a wife, not a husband, has been a caregiver to Bonnie for almost 3 years. And David's role as a caregiver means that he's providing Bonnie with any assistance that she requires. This can range from managing the many supplies and medications that she requires to participating in their periodic interactions with her renal medical team at UHN. And he also is a principal role in providing her with encouragement, positive emotional support. And it helps that they are best friends and still have fun together. Thank you, David. And Bonnie as well. I can see you in the corner there. Hi. Next we have is Uzma Koraidi. She lives in Mississauga, Ontario with her two lovely children and her husband and his parents. Uzma provided support as a caregiver to her late mother, who was diagnosed with renal failure in 2016. She started peritoneal dialysis in 2018 and passed away in early of 2020. She was responsible, along with her two sisters, for her specialist and hospital appointments and her home and personal care throughout that time. Thank you so much, Uzma, for being here with your amazing experience.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Erwin Schweitzer. Erwin is a caregiver to his lovely wife, Kathy, who recently actually started peritoneal dialysis about 3 weeks ago. And they're going through that journey right now in person, in real time. And so he has a lot to provide in terms of that. And Erwin is also very artistic and has amazing aspects in his personal life and does so many different things in terms of juggling being a caregiver as well as a person to himself. So thank you, Erwin, so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I now pass it over to Candace to start us off with our first question.
Awesome. Thank you, Sadia. We are so grateful to have you guys here today and sharing your amazing experiences and your knowledge with us. So again, I'm sure over and over again today, Sadia and I are probably going to say thank you maybe too many times, but you can never say thank you. Our first topic today is discussing mental health and a set of questions around adapting and coping. So my question is, after your person was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, how did your role change? And what did you do to support yourself as the caregiver? Andrew, I'm wondering if you can start us off with this question.
Absolutely. I think what you find initially when the diagnosis comes out, as the caregiver, you're 100% into it. You're doing whatever you can, absolutely 100%. But there will come a point that you do understand that this is a long term. You've got to be in it for the long haul. Things will hopefully get a little bit better in terms of what's happening with your loved one, but you have to realize that you just can't run 100% all the time. It is very important that you as a caregiver don't really hit the point where you burn out. So I often say it's not a 50-50 deal. It's maybe an 80-20 deal. And in that 20%, you have to make sure that you are doing things. You're getting maybe out of the house, you're seeing other friends. And most importantly, you should not feel guilty about taking that 20%. We'll kind of touch on that subject a bit later on, but it is very important that you maintain a focus that it's just like having a little rest before you go at it again. And that's basically the way we've handled it. In my particular case, though, Lori, my wife, is a very strong person and likes to keep her own appointments and everything. So I can't say I was particularly that stressed or there's a lot of things for me to do. I just did whatever she needed at the time and just took care of things.
I would like to add that one of the major challenges was the whole idea of adapting to the change, which was getting used to the idea and in particularly educating myself in every aspect that I could, both with regard to kidney disease, the role I'd be playing, and the information came from many sources. I was very proactive in seeking to feel that comfort level so that I could perform to the best of my ability. And then once I got all that information, and it was, it's a learning curve, is adjusting to it, recognizing that I was going to accept it. And that also took a bit of time because, you're a bit in, I won't say denial, but it's like all life changes. There is an adjustment required.
Can I jump in? Oh, I want to speak to the aspect about how your role changes. And so in the case, my husband used to do a lot of the outside work. So I found myself now having to mow the lawn, take the garbage out. We have an in-ground pool. It was adapting and trying. It's like a redistribution of roles or duties or, whatever responsibilities. So I wasn't quite prepared for that. It kind of all happened all at the same time. And so in time, it was a lot to handle, being a caregiver, looking after the medical needs, helping with medications, medical appointments, and then having all of that other overload of other stuff around the house, all the stuff that he was used to doing. So in time, we ended up kind of hiring a few people to help us with that, and some family members too. But I still remember in the first few days kind of having fun with it, mowing the lawn and seeing every week I'd say, okay, can I beat my record? How fast I can do this? I mean, you use whatever little tips you can to try to motivate yourself or help yourself out.
So in my case, it was my mom. And so that's a whole different category for me. And I was already a kind of caregiver to my mom because my dad passed away 16 years ago. So already me and another sister of mine, we were supporting her. She was living on her own. She did not want to move in with anybody. And so we supported her the best way we could prior to her kidney failure. And so I was already taking her to her appointments, but she was a lot more healthier, doing her own stuff. And so I had already become a caregiver, gotten into that role, and I have my own family. I have my in-laws living with me too, but they're pretty young. Well, as young as can be, and assisted me. My kids had to give up a lot because I was half the time doing things for my mom. But when the kidney issue came in, that became a whole different, almost like a full-time position for me because my mom's in a different home. I'm in a different home. So that became a challenge in itself. And it says like it takes a village to raise a family. For me, in my experience, it really was like that. And it wasn't just me, but my sister. One sister moved next door. Another sister uprooted herself to Florida and moved here. So we all had to schedule things around. And that's how we did it as a family. And that changed. That did bring in a lot of stress for a certain time. But then we learned how to balance things, schedule things. One person did, who can do the breakfast, who can do the lunch, who can do the dinner. This is how we schedule it out. Because mental health is definitely a big part, coping with it, adapting with it. It was huge, but the support of the family was the biggest part. And we were blessed enough to have that family. So taking help from the family is, I think, if you can, if not family, neighbors, friends is the biggest thing.
I just want to add to what Uzma and Francine said. The large part of the work ends up with you as your loved one's partner. But when there are opportunities to ask for help or pay for help, as Francine did with some of the stuff, or as Uzma with her family members, the smartest thing that you can do for yourself and for your person is to avail yourself of those opportunities. Awesome.
It seems that everyone's, in terms of their role, is very different with each of you guys in terms of what's important and how you see it. And you do have to do that whole self-care, like Francine was saying, to make sure that if you're good up here, you're good in here. And that way you can support your person going through that journey. So really good insight from all of you guys. So I'm going to go on to the next question. And that is, what kind of support or needs would you guys recommend for your person when you notice some kind of change, either in their mood, in terms of how they're dealing with their stress, and also understanding any kind of new information that was coming, information overload, that kind of thing. And I'm going to pass this over to Erwin to start us off.
Thank you, Sally. That's a big question. I think the first part of the question is noticing the changes. You have to be sensitive to what your partner is going through without being intrusive, because the fact of the matter remains that they are experiencing an illness. You can't prevent the illness. You can help them get through it. In Kathy's case, for example, she gets an awful lot of leg cramps. So when I hear her start to moan a bit, I know what the story is. She doesn't have to ask me, please massage my calves. I'll just do that. The other thing is that the lines of communication have to be free and open on both ends, both as the caregiver and as a person. If there's something that works, maintain that. If it doesn't work, figure out a way to change it. And you can't do that without talking. So when I notice things that are changing for Kathy, I'll very gently say, how are you feeling today? And that's pretty much the cue as to how things are going. After a while, you get to read your partner's facial features and hear the changes in the tones of voice, and you can figure things out. But if you don't talk, if you don't communicate, you miss that opportunity to provide the help that you know you want to give because you are in a situation where you can be the caregiver. So first and foremost is those lines of communication. And with respect to information, I go with Kathy to her appointments. So it's not one set of ears and eyes that are taking in the information. It's two sets. And following appointments, we will sit down and we'll do a debrief between the two of us to make sure that what we heard and what we've written and what we've been taught is the same thing. If there are differences, then we know to go back to the nephrology team. I understood this. Am I correct, or is my partner correct? So once again, information overload, changes in outlook, feelings, overall mood, all comes down to making sure that you maintain these lines of communication.
You learn to know what each grunt means and each side eye.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's caregiving. I mean, you're kind of in a roller coaster ride. You're constantly in a state of flux. There's always change. That's the only constant, is that it's always changing. So it's really important that you're on the same page through the highs of the roller coaster ride and the lows, and ultimately to keep that balance and that focus on what are we going to do about the change? How are we going to react to it? And as Erwin said, communication is so important, and that means listening as much as speaking, probably even more, to be attentive to what you're hearing, both verbally and seeing non-verbally.
That's very true. And, my situation particularly was so different because I had a parent to address that. So being a child to a parent, I think it's so different than it would be, I think, with a spouse, the understanding to, because my mom was always just a mom. And when you're a child, it's very different just to understand and listen. And for her to listen to me now, the roles being changed, and for her to listen to me that way. And my mother was a very dominating kind of a personality. And so that was a difficult part. And I had to go through that very gradually. She appreciated me for everything that I did and learned to respect my judgment because I was there with her. Like Andrew said, with all the appointments you have, because her moods changed drastically with all this. Depression became a big part for her. So I had to be the positive person. I had to listen to the nephrologist, the doctors, and explain everything more to her. Because she would, half the time, I don't know if it was medication, doze off half the time and during the appointments. So I had to make sure I'm more alert and then re-explain everything to her. The doctors and nurses would do that, but I'd have to always do that again and in a more positive way, really explain it well and make her understand, with everything. So it wasn't always easy, but we did get through it. And if not me, then I would explain it to my siblings on our WhatsApp group, because not everybody was in town. Then somebody else would do another one-on-one call and then explain it further. That's how we got through her moods and things. And then she would better understand it from another person, another child that she had a better understanding with. So that was good.
As I think Erwin mentioned, you can get into an overload situation, both in terms of the information that's coming at you, as well as the overload of emotions that you're going through. So, you have to do sort of an ongoing inventory, if you will, about what's the current situation, where do we want to go, and how can we get there?
Teamwork at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's it.
100%.
Francine, I'm wondering, as we start to discuss some of those things, that juggling and the stress and potential burnout, I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about steps you've taken for your own personal health when you recognized that you were stressed as a caregiver. And it was enjoyable to mow the lawn and clean the pool, but at some point you said, I'm not going to be doing this all the time because things pile up. So what was that like? Can you describe some of those things to us?
Yeah. I'm definitely not gifted in those areas, and nor do I like it. But I would say that the steps that I took changed over time also. So here we are 7 years into this. And at the very beginning, like Sadia introduced me, it was an unexpected. My husband was hospitalized on an urgent basis, emergency, like it happened so quickly. And it was really overwhelming. And so you're dealing with the shock of it, trying to absorb all that, and then trying to be there for your loved one. You tend to forget yourself. You're so focused on everything that's happening, and you minimize your own emotional state because your whole focus is directed to your loved one. And so I would say I kind of forgot all about myself for the first 2 months. But what I did do was I started to journal. So when I felt like it was becoming so overwhelming, I would take moments either when he was on dialysis or at the end of the day, would just take some time to write, my thoughts and express it that way, because I didn't want him to feel extra guilt for the emotions that I was going through and the physical load and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the first step I took, was started to journal. And there's a tremendous amount of distress that happens, obviously, for the patient, but also for the family members. So in this case, like, it was just my husband and I. Our granddaughters, a son-in-law lived a little bit, not that far, but, they tried to help us as much as possible. But you're the one that's living it every day, being in the same house. And so, there's a tremendous amount of stress. And also what complicated it was after he was discharged, because his kidney function was only at 12%, and then it went down significantly lower within days, but he wasn't ready for dialysis. Like, mentally, he just wasn't ready for it. So it took a whole month for him to make a decision to be on dialysis. And so during that whole month, I can remember just being so full of stress and worry and anxiety, and what's going to happen? Is he going to make it? And so I remember writing in my journal 2 months into this and thought, I haven't done anything for myself. I haven't reached out. I mean, my friends were checking in and family and all that, but for me to do a social activity or just do something for myself, I hadn't done that in at least 2 months. And then, so when he got onto dialysis in center, of course, I was there with him all the time and all the appointments. You start to get into a little bit of a rhythm. And then I slowly started to integrate, going for walks with a friend, reaching out to people. I had friends at the beginning that even offered to come and mow the lawn, like do things like that. And the mistake that I made was not taking them up on that, because I said, oh, I can handle it. Oh, I can handle it. Like, I can do that next thing and that next thing. And that was a mistake. We'll talk about that later in terms of things that we would do differently. But anyway, I just remember just, trying to do that on my own. In terms of, I have a great deal of inner resources. I check in with myself often just to label what it is that I'm feeling. And I find that if I just identify it, it helps me cope with it, just putting it out there. And in terms of having a conversation between me and me. And I find that just having that self-awareness was another step that I took in terms of just identifying it and at least acknowledging it. And I'm a person of faith, and so I pray a lot, and worship songs get me through it. I mean, that is my first and foremost go-to place, is listening to some song that's going to give me strength and give me hope, and just being able to ride with it and go with it. And so that for sure is the constant in my life. And I remember also, once we were trained for leadership with a different ministry that we're in, there was a visual of a barrel. And again, being self-aware of, is your barrel full, or is it half full, or is it kind of half empty? That image always stayed with me, no matter what it is we do, whether it's in leadership or in caregiver. And I would keep that in mind also. It's like, okay, Francine, where's your barrel today? Where is it at? Again, it's all part of that self-awareness. So that's another thing that I did. And then over time, I started to call friends to go play some golf. I reached out to those who I knew would take that time to do that with me. But it took a while. It took a long time to get there. I would say for the first 6 months, as he was doing in-center hemodialysis, that was the main focus. The following year, 6 months later, he switched to peritoneal dialysis at home. And I found that then he got into a certain rhythm and he was far more independent. So I was really benefiting from that he really took on his own care. And even though you're trained to as a caregiver to learn how to do the machine and whatnot, like I found that he was really good with taking charge of that. And so that freed me up more. And it was all about adapting to all of that change. And it was certainly very overwhelming for many months. And I realized that I had lost myself during those first 2 months too, and really had to get back to giving myself permission to take those little walks or do whatever. Like I needed to kind of say, okay, it's time now that you take care of yourself, because you can't take care of him if you're not taking care of yourself. So anyway, and nowadays, I do honor that in myself too, that I just continue to do some physical activity, go out and play golf, play tennis, do whatever I need to. So it's a long answer, but I think there's many different steps that I took to address that over a period of time.
Absolutely. That's amazing, Francis. I
Now,
love
when you
the barrel. I want to keep that in my head too for my week to week. That's great.
when you're talking about someone who's a loved one or someone you really care about, when a crisis occurs, that's your total focus. Totally. It's only after the fact, as you adjust over time, you start to either think of it yourself, what about me? Or have other people say, what about you? And there's where something like the peer support really have helped me a lot, was in talking to colleagues or peers, people going through similar situations, and hearing what they were doing. That it was the only when it impressed upon me the importance of taking care of myself for the health of the relationship and the ongoing position that caregiver patient position to be in. But that took time, and it's actually still a work in progress.
Any other insight from our other panelists? All right. So let's move on then to the next theme and our next discussion, which is communications and conflict. So we kind of already brushed a little bit on the communications, but this one is in terms of what are some strategies that you guys have used when communicating with your person when they are non-communicative or are having a difficulty with expressing their feelings? And David, I'd ask you to start this conversation.
Well, there's the ideal, and then there's the real. Okay. Now, the ideal is you have a perfect communication line between the two of you. You completely understand each other and you deal with situations. But the reality is, no matter how close you are with that person, regardless of your relation to them, whether they're a spouse or a child or a parent, the reality is that the thoughts and your feelings that I have weren't necessarily ones that we were willing or able to. They were pretty intense at times, and I don't know if that's because of fear or the pain of confronting the reality of the situation, either because you're unwilling to talk about it, to share those deep feelings, or because you're not willing to. I know in the case of Bonnie, my wife, I often feel that she's not telling me things because she doesn't want to worry me, you know? And that concerns me because I really want to know what she's going through and how I can participate and help her, get through it. And, it's not cut or dried, it's just like, it's a difficult thing. And, you make a point to say, I wanted to sit down and talk about these things and see if we can't find, a common ground. But as a man, I don't want to generalize, but, we are not necessarily always good about sharing our innermost thoughts. And so, that it's a lot of it is on me. I'll admit it. And also, I don't want to worry her, like I mentioned, her worrying me. But I don't want her to worry, how solid is what I'm going through. So, you know, what can I do about it? The question is like, how do I get things on the table, basically? So I'm always asking her, so, how you feeling? What are you thinking? I'm trying to pay attention to those like, nonverbal cues, as I mentioned earlier. I try to read what she's going through. I am fortunate because her eyes tell me exactly what she's going through. Usually I can see. So that helps me. But I try to be tactful as much as I'm able, but so there's a frustration level because of that we're talking about something that is so deep felt that sometimes beyond the kinds of conversations where, oh, I have an appointment next week, I'm doing a new test, I'm looking at this, and those are pretty basic taking care of business issues. But really getting down to the hardcore internal feelings, that's tough. That is really tough. So, again, it's a work in progress for me, after we've been married for 40 years. And, I'd like to believe it's all second nature that we would be having these kinds of, discussion. The truth is, we still need work in confronting the challenge.
Yeah. And it's the same concept with the patient that if we tell you something, we see it in your eyes that, oh, you guys are more worried, then we back away and not want to tell you certain things. So it's really having that open communication for both and knowing that both are there to support one another throughout the process. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. Yeah.
I find that what I try to avoid is not making assumptions and asking some questions to try to trigger or say something like, well, I've noticed that blah, 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 or here's what I think. Can you just maybe let me know, is that what you're feeling? Like, we'll try sometimes to articulate it, but check in, right? Instead of just assuming. I'm blessed with someone who is very articulate and very expressive. So most of the time I don't have to guess, which is a real blessing. He will openly share and tell me what he's going through, but I see it in him too, that sometimes he doesn't want to worry me with some stuff, but eventually he will communicate it. Yeah, sometimes I've had to help kind of draw a few things out and by gently seeing what I was observing. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, part of that is your role is kind of, as a caregiver, is kind of a cheerleader. You know, you want to, rah, 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 keep it positive, to keep the focus, encouraging and looking toward the long-term future. And, sometimes that's not easy to do either.
Yeah. Even comforting the person. And that's not easy either when you're kind of wondering, oh, is it the right comfort? Is it not? And no one can tell the future. So you're going by ear on that.
Mhm. And I think we've heard that, the person you're taking care of, it could be the whole spectrum of people who are very independent, very engaged, very much part of their, taking charge of their own health, basically. But, and that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is people who are completely, quite reliant on you to fulfill that role.
You have both sides of the coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that topic? No? All right. As patients, we go through some pretty difficult things, and there are different points in our kidney journey that we approach difficult topics that we might not want to talk about, or we might shut down. I'm wondering if you could discuss how you approached your mom, when a difficult topic needed to be brought up and it needed to be spoken about.
So with my mom, again, as I may have mentioned while conversing in another topic, is a lot of the things initially with her kidney journey was definitely very difficult. She was in denial. She did not accept dialysis. So that in itself was very difficult. Because first it was just the percentage and also understanding her kidney journey. It was a lot of education. I had to learn everything because also was dialysis. And then the next biggest thing was diet. These two factors were huge. My mom was a lover of food. If she could feed the whole world, she would. She would make it with her hand and literally feed you. Anybody that walked through the house could not leave without eating her food. That's amazing. And she would have like get-togethers, parties, huge, like literally huge. She cooked. She was an excellent cook, but she believed in rich food too. And then, so her hardest thing was when she first became a diabetic. And so we went to classes to learn about the diet for diabetes. And then when she became, that was something to get used to. And then when you learn the kidney diet, it is almost opposite a lot of things, because I had to learn that. So that was struggle for her because she said, no, but I was told to have this and now it's opposite. So that was a big struggle. And me as a primary caregiver, it was a struggle for me because I'm now the child becoming the mom rather.
Right.
And for me to educate her and teach her was just so difficult. But I had to do it. Somebody had to do that. And my other sisters just backed off on that because they couldn't take that. One person had to be the bad person. Let's put it that way. And so I did. I had to be strict many times. We had a lot of arguments back and forth with that, but I did. And you get all the, the pamphlets with pictures, everything. I would educate her, I would tell her. The thing is with my mom, slowly, but surely, we try and make it tasteful for her. She's very much into spice and all that, but we tried, we did everything. And so that was one thing with the diet. It took many years till the end. But then also one thing we have to say, once in a while, you have to also realize, which some of the physicians at once in a while would say to me, you're doing an excellent job, but also have to remember, it's not the quantity, it's also the quality. So you do have to realize that they also have a life to live. You can't only be focused on no, you have to follow this by this way. So let them enjoy once in a while too, that you have to do a little give and take. I think sometimes I used to get too focused on that. That's the type of person I was, because I want my mom to be better. I want her to do this. So that's what people have to realize sometimes. You do a little give and take. Doesn't mean you throw in the blanket and just let her have whatever, but you have to do a little back and forth. And with the dialysis is that because she was so much in denial, we had a lot of convincing to do. She said, no, I don't need to do that. Give me a couple of pills and I'll be fine. And then we had to take her, we had to teach her a lot. And one of the places that I took her to was Kidney Foundation. I took her to a couple of the group meetings when I first met Sadia and a few other people. And she was just in awe of how everybody was who had either dialysis or a kidney transplant. And she said, they've all had this. I mean, they're happy people. She literally thought life would be so different. And eventually she got into this. I mean, along with a lot of other education, and also with, like I said, my brothers are overseas and she had video calls with them one-on-one. And so not just me alone, because I was like repetitive. It was become redundant, just one person constantly. So everybody had a different way of explaining things to her. And then eventually it came in, and that's how our strategy worked. So it's good to get help from others and take that on. And I think that if anybody's out there, if you're coping with it alone, don't take help from others. That's the biggest thing.
That is great advice. And it kind of led to what Francine had said too about asking for help when she should have, and now she knows. Asking for help is key from anyone that offers it for sure. So we're going to actually just jump in because we have a little bit of time left. And so we're going to end off with our caregivers providing us with some amazing tips and advice that they have. And if each of you can provide about 1 to 3 thoughts that you provide, that if you could go back in time, what would you have said to yourself then that, hey, this is a good tip. This is a good idea. Listen to me now, that kind of thing. So I'm going to pass it to Erwin first to give us his insight.
Well, it was my wife, Kathy, who said, why don't you see if there are any support groups out there for you? So she's looking out for me. And I must say that joining the caregiver support group was very illuminating. And as Uzma was saying that, her mom was very, very surprised to find out that there were other people like her out there. So surrounding yourself with people of similar purposes makes the work a little bit easier to do. The work is daunting. You want your person to be in the best shape that they can possibly be. And yes, you are the one who's living with it with your person, but there are other people out there who have gone through the same journey and who are very happy to share and very happy to help. So the caregiver support group was a beautiful find for me. So you need to look for people of like mind, and don't be afraid to share your thoughts and concerns.
Yeah, very well said.
So like Erwin said, I think the support group for me, would have been a great place to have joined. I didn't join at the time. I was overwhelmed and very busy with my mom, along with my sisters. But for me, my mom was a full-time job. I could not get away at certain times. She needed me. Like I said, I wasn't in home. I had 2 homes that I was running. So I didn't join at that time, but I did now. And great to be here. Anybody who can, it's a great place. Another thing I would say is get volunteer services, and there are available apparently, where you can get people to come and sit with your loved ones or just be there so that you can go out and run in for errands for people who desperately need that kind of service. Maybe there's not, but they can come in and for all kinds of needs. So that's something to look online, and or otherwise, you can get extra PSW helps and things like that. That is very important to look out there. There are all kinds of services, but it's very important to look out for that because they are available.
And also going to your person's social worker to get more support and other ideas and stuff is a
Yes,
good
that's
resource.
right. The social worker. Exactly.
David, what's your tip?
Well, I think anticipate needs. Rather than just waiting for a need to arrive, you have to be a little bit more proactive to try to figure out what role you can best play in the particular situation you're confronting. So, don't make assumptions. I think Francine said that, and I think that's really valid. That's one piece of advice I would give myself. The other thing is, having said that, sometimes you have to back off. You're kind of walking a fine line here between wanting to do everything you can do for the person you're taking care of and letting them do as much as they want or can do to take care of themselves. So it's a collaborative thing, it shouldn't be about controlling. And sometimes, we stray into one territory and the other. So maintaining, a sense of humor about where you are. Sometimes you're looking at it from such a serious perspective that you really need a little bit of perspective, and humor can really help. And along with that, my last advice was count your blessings. Be grateful for all the good things that you have, all the resources that you have available, that for having the intellect to be able to confront these issues, and for having someone who in your life to be able to perform this for.
Not everyone has a caregiver like you, amazing folks, to support them or are financially supported. Yeah.
Count your blessings.
Good tips. And Andrew, what about you?
I just thought everybody would cover these other points before he got to me. So I was trying to go ahead and say, but getting a little more factual is the fact that when you have appointments, just dealing with appointments. You write the questions down.
Francine, what about you?
So very quickly, I would definitely, going back, I would definitely accept the help that was offered right at the beginning instead of thinking I could do it all. And then I also got to a point where then I would reach out to people and kind of make a list of the things that I needed after I smartened up and said, okay, this is what I need the help with. And I had a good group of girlfriends that were just so ready to help. And so life is like that. They were willing to help me in my time of need. And then, when it's their time of need, then we are there for each other too. That's just how life is. We go through different stages of that, of who's in need. And reaching out to the Kidney Foundation is also something that I should have done much sooner. And my husband did, in terms of reaching out to someone who was a transplant recipient also, but it took me a long time to do the same. I want to do a little bit of a plug here for the caregivers group that meets monthly, and it's so helpful. Just like you have heard some of the exchanges of conversation today, we support each other, we encourage each other. If you want to sign up, Sadia, maybe you can put that in the chat line. You can just go to the website kidney.ca, and you can sign up or send an email to Sadia, or there's also one-on-one peer support. So if you don't want to join the group or want to start off with just one-on-one, that's also available. And it's extremely helpful, extremely beneficial, because, we're not alone in this, and there is help and there is support. So we are all there to help support and encourage each other. And we can empathize. We all go through the same thing, so we understand what we're all going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's so important. I was definitely the benefit from the Kidney Foundation as a patient. And then I was so excited that I got to be on the other end and be a peer mentor. And I was texting a woman a few years ago. She preferred to text instead of call. And so we talked about a lot of things. And then I got a text that she was on her way to have her transplant. So we stayed in contact that whole time, and we still chat to this day. So I think peer support, like all of you have said, is so important. And what you guys are doing here is changing lives. So thank you so much for everything that you have said today, and all that you do for your person and for the greater community too.
Thank you.
So we have 3 minutes, and I had a few questions submitted. I'm wondering if one of you can chat, since we talked a little bit about this. A social worker has asked, as a social worker, what can they do to support you as a caregiver? Does anyone have any tips for our social workers out there?
I know they're overloaded. Oftentimes the focus is on the patient. And I think sometimes we get a little bit forgotten, but I think the social workers that came and spoke at our peer support groups, I think that was a wonderful opportunity for us to share with them also what we go through, and for them to give us some tips also. So I know they're overloaded and they can't really deal a lot with one-on-ones, but I think that by attending sometimes our peer support groups, that's one avenue, that's one way that they can, we can benefit from their insights. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I would also add that there are a lot of resources out there, and some are better known than others. And I think that that's one area that social work, in fact, I think the whole renal team at the hospital, like we're at TGH, and they are a wonderful team. But as it was mentioned, they have a lot on their plates. There's a lot of stuff going on, and they have a lot of patients. So I think that it would behoove social workers to make an effort to let them know about the financial resources, the support resources through the Kidney Foundation, through other internet availability, even great printed material out there for people who aren't tech savvy, for instance, or just want the printed word. So yeah, that's where I would say, knowledge is power. The more information, the more options we have, both as caregivers and as patients, to use that information.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. So on behalf of the Center for Living Organ Donation, again, I want to thank all of you for today and sharing your knowledge. We only got a tiny little vision of what you guys go through as caregivers and what your role is in your journey with kidney care. So we would love to do a second part of this. We are in discussions about that with the caregivers. So all of you who are on the line, stay tuned, because they have so much knowledge that we would love to continue to share with you. At the center, we also have a YouTube channel. This will be up on the channel, so we'll share that widely. So if you missed any parts of it, we'll make sure that that is available for everyone as well.
Thank you, everyone, even from the Kidney Foundation. We appreciate it. And our amazing volunteer facilitators, you guys, thank you. You're the heart and soul of everything. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.